So the channel Drawn of History is one that I found very recently based on a video about the Marquis de Lafayette, which I'm sure a lot of you who've watched my channel are familiar with at this point. Um, so I wanted to check out one of their videos. They actually reached out to me and gave me their blessing, so I thought I would give a little shout out here to Drawn of History. Like I said, they're still a relatively young YouTube channel. I suppose mine is still pretty young as well, but they're pretty young and they have a very unique visual style and stuff like that. So I highly recommend y'all go check them out and give them a subscribe. Maybe we can get them closer to that 10,000 subscriber mark, which I do think they really deserve. So Drawn of History is the name, and that's there if you guys want to check it out. We'll get started with the video. So this is a three-parter. We're going to start with part one. We're going to just kind of end the stream on part one. Maybe we'll continue the series next week and do part 2 and 3. But I kind of want to incentivize you guys to go check out that channel. So we're just going to preview the channel by watching part 1 of the War of 1812. So let's get it started.
Now, Vice Admiralty courts are very good for the colonies. 13! Stop drawing on your desk! Stop drawing on my desk. Stop smuggling tea. Stop not paying taxes. Why are you always hassling me so much? Because you're ungrateful. Now, Vice Admiralty courts.
So that is already really fun. It lays out a lot of the big problems that occurred between the 13 would-be United States American colonies, which I think is pay your taxes, stop throwing away tea, referring to the
so much. Because stop smuggling tea. Stop not paying taxes. Why you won't ask?
What was the first
Stop
thing?
drawing on my desk. Stop smuggling tea. Stop not paying taxes.
Yeah, not paying taxes. So there was a concept called salutary neglect, which I've talked about this so many times it's probably getting boring, but I'm going to say it again because it has to be brought up anytime we talk about the American Rebellion. Salutary neglect is a policy that the British had towards the American colonies where they were very hands-off when it came to governing the American colonies. So the American colonies created a lot of their own local governments, in that developed a very unique identity that wasn't... It was British, but not completely British. It was also a little something else, colored by their geographic location and their distance from the mainland British Empire. There was something that made them different, and so one big part is they weren't really accustomed to paying a lot of British taxes. Taxed British tea didn't end up getting paid for all the time. They would prefer the tax-free Dutch tea that they would smuggle in. So there's a lot going on there, and the British didn't typically crack down on that until after the 7 Years' War, where they needed money. They needed more money because the war was really expensive, and now these colonies that are just sitting around, not used to being told what to do, are more likely to rebel against them. So this is kind of a monster that the British created. So I hope they're proud of what they've done. Look at us today.
Why are you always hassling me so much? Because you're ungrateful. Now, Vice Admiralty courts are Hey, Canada. I'm gonna ditch class next period. You wanna come? With you? No. Well, I forgot. Your old goody-goody colony. Why you always acting better than me? I don't know. Maybe...
Yeah, the Canadian colonies were a thing. So, and they did not participate. That's where a lot of the loyalists were. Benedict Arnold, who's famous for betraying the United States in the war, while he was still fighting for the United States, tried to take parts of Canada and failed. Got his butt kicked.
Because your homespun clothes look like snotty handkerchiefs? Come on, you and me, we should totally hook up. Ew, we're like cousins. We could be kissing cousins.
This is already perfect.
13, you're so freaking weird. One day, Canada. One day.
The style's very crude, but really fun.
It's 1776, and the 13 colonies were tired of being simps for England. They were sick and tired of paying taxes for nothing, other than war debt from the French and Indian War, which they kind of started. They were sick and tired of British troops trying to take...
That is one of the things. So the French and Indian War is the American version of the 7 Years' War. While there's a lot of stuff going on in Europe, the Americans and the British, which are the same thing but different, as I've established, are fighting the French and the Indians in the American West, trying to claim a little bit more land out there. That ends up working out for them. They end up actually getting a pretty big chunk of land out there, so that ended up working out for them. But they ended up accruing a lot of debt in the process, and the British were protecting them. So one of the big problems there is that they spent a lot of money trying to protect the Americans, and the Americans didn't want to pay for that because they were not accustomed to paying for that. And, the British would have been fine if they didn't try to assert taxes. They were still making bank off the colonies, but they had a lot of potential to make more.
Take the guns they had been stockpiling to shoot British troops. And they were sick and tired of drinking cheap, crappy British East India tea. They wanted to drink smuggled and slightly more expensive crappy tea. So they declared...
That is a very good point. Sorry, there's so many details here. I know you're here for the pause game here, right? You're here for me to, comment on stuff. The British tea was being forced upon the colonies because the British gave the East India Company a monopoly, which would actually make the tea less expensive. But the colonies were only able to buy that. They'd rather spend more money and have the option to have the smuggled Dutch tea, because on principle, they just didn't like being told that they had to buy the East India Company tea. They felt that that was something that Parliament didn't have any right to force upon the colonies. And if they can tell us what tea we're allowed to buy one day, then they can start legislating more for us. And we're not accustomed to that. So we are going to start rebelling. This is a representation of the Boston Tea Party, where a bunch of people dressed as Indians and threw a bunch of tea into the ocean. It was really expensive and really pissed off the British.
Tea. They wanted to drink smuggled and slightly more expensive crappy tea. So they declared independence, and it sucked.
Yeah, it did.
Turns out fighting your superpower colonial daddy is hard, so for help, they turned to France, England's arch nemesis. The stiff wind to England's Trump hair. Hey, Louis XVI, we somehow won the Battle of Saratoga, signaling that we might actually win this war. With your help, that is. If France becomes our ally, you could defeat your enemy England, force them to lose their most valuable colonies, and possibly regain some of your own. Stop! A man can only get so hard. So America won the war and its independence with France's help. And by help, it was more like France beat the boss while little brother United States mashed away on a controller that wasn't even plugged in. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, ended the conflict.
Kinda. Yeah, I think the French often don't get as much credit as they deserve. I find that a lot more recent studies highlight the French much more, but in a lot of ways, in the common telling of the revolution, the French are important, but we're always highlighting our own, which is kind of a natural thing to do, but it kind of downplays the reality there. And don't get me started with the Spanish. The Spanish get no credit, and the Dutch, they gave us a ton of money. Everybody kind of came together to help us fight the British.
conflict and established the new order in North America. With this treaty, the matter has been settled. I'm not so sure these terms will be fulfilled. We've gained the Northwest Territory, but England isn't abandoning their forts there. We've secured fishing rights off the coast of Canada, but we're already getting hassled by British naval ships. And as for us returning Loyalist property... I mean, you could have it back if you want. Yeah, but you forgot the most important part. Great Britain has recognized us as a free and independent nation, something that they will never forget or ever try to question. Hey guys, look at the shadows this candle's giving me. 1, 2, 3, 4 shadows. It's foreshadowing.
Oh, okay, I'm dumb. So the British-American relationship was rocky, but not imperfect. I mean, it was imperfect, but not like in shambles or anything. Like immediately after the war, we established pretty strong trade relations with them. They didn't necessarily always respect us, but we benefited more from them in a lot of ways during times of peace than we did from the French, who we didn't get as many of our practical goods from. We got a lot of them from the British. We got more, I guess, luxury goods from France. So our relationship with the British was actually even more important than our relationship with France, which is unfortunate, given how much the French basically won us the war.
So we won the Americans' war against England, but we didn't get any land. Nah. We didn't get back Canada, Louisiana, the Caribbean colonies, or holdings in India? No. And the war cost $1 billion livres, so the country is going bankrupt? Oui. Well, at least it can't get any worse. Hello? Do you have a second to talk about our Lord and Savior, Revolution? Back across the Atlantic, the young American Republic...
So yeah, the French Revolution, who's to say what would have happened without the American Revolution? It's very possible that some form of French Revolution would have happened without it, but there is, first of all, like an inspiration that comes from the American Revolution. American writers end up being pretty popular, and American figures in general end up being very popular in France. A lot of them are very much romanticized. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, he ends up doing a lot of his best writing in relation to what's going on over there, which is really interesting. So America, we have this massive influence, and then they see a revolution against a monarch turn out well, and in a lot of ways inspires the people who helped us do it initially to stand up against their own monarch, which was fascinating.
Started to make its way in the world. You know, declaring neutrality, establishing trade, displacing native people, American-type stuff.
Yeah.
Then an old friend came knocking on the door. Hey, America! Oh, hey, France. Hey, remember how you had a revolution because you wanted to have liberty and hate the taxes and stupid kings? Well, yes, I do. Oh, we did the same thing, man. That's fantastic. What are you doing now that you have a revolution? We're cutting off everyone's head. It's bonkers, man. You would love it. Do you want in?
So America's revolution is sort of conservative. We have like our own, we're able to govern ourselves, but it's still kind of like an upper class governing the little people. A lot of the same infrastructure is still in place. It's in a lot of ways to maintain many parts of their lifestyle before the British started asserting power over them. While some bigger government ideas start seeping their way in, and then we end up developing very slowly into what we are now. But overall, it was initially just maintain what they had before by separating from the British, because they were trying to undermine the way of life that they had currently been living for so long. The French, they were big into overhauling their system. They were extreme compared to the United States. And like they developed so quickly that it became a bit of a disaster.
No, I think we're okay. Suit yourself, a-hole. I got to head back. England and the rest of Europe is pooping bricks right now, and I gotta put this mean short son of a bitch in charge. I hear you want to buy New Orleans. If it's for sale, I will sell it to you. Hey, I thought Spain owned it. You fell off a truck. It's mine now. I will sell you New Orleans.
So yeah, Spain owned New Orleans, and I think it was like sold to Napoleon under the condition that it would not be resold, but then he resold it anyway. So that makes the ownership a little bit muddy, but the Americans got it on a bargain, so take what you can.
The North of Louisiana for, say, $50 million. Really? Are you sure? Yes, well, I am about to go to war with all of Europe, and I do not have the time to invade you from there right now. Wait, what? Nothing. We have a deal? Oui, bon, au revoir. Now having both the Northwest Territory and the Louisiana Territory, and since baseball had not been invented yet, America engaged in its original favorite pastime, taking Indian land. White settlers had steadily been heading west, encroaching on Native American land and plopping down pretty.
That was one of the big problems with the British as well. Americans wanted to expand west, but the British didn't want to spend time and resources fighting more Indian wars in the West, which, yeah, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Pretty much wherever they pleased. Some tribes were bought off, but others had the gall to stand there and fight. Two such brazen, Shawnee Native Americans living in the Indiana Territory were Tecumseh and his brother Tenskwatawa, aka the Prophet.
Tecumseh.
Brothers and sisters, the problems that affect one of us affect us all. We need to unite to form a confederation that can defend all of us from the Americans. Yes, and I've been to the other side. I've spoken with the Master of Life. He has shown me two worlds, one of blessings and one of pain, and we must reject the white ways of the evil spirit, their customs, their goods, their alcohol, and the way that they put up inspirational words on their living room walls. I mean, what is that? It's really tacky. The governor of the Indiana Territory, William Henry Harrison, was not impressed and fearful of their growing power.
Hey, if you're so buddy-buddy with your Master of Life, why don't you make the sun disappear?
And then there was an eclipse.
With your Master of Life, why don't you make the sun disappear?
That's Mr. Beat. Oh, geez. I knew he knew the guy, but like I didn't know he was actually it. That's cool.
Then there was an eclipse.
Oh, fart.
Psst, Tecumseh, come here. What is it, white man? If you're going to unite the people along the Mississippi, you're probably going to need these. Why are you giving me these? Why should I trust you British, who abandoned us after the Revolution? Well, if you haven't noticed, I still have territory in Canada, and my hands are full with this Napoleon guy. But if you don't want these guns, I'm sure I can find a home for them. Leave them and go. Brother, I must venture off and unite the people. I leave you in charge, but please, don't start anything with the Americans, okay? We're just not yet, okay? Why? If they shoot us, the Master of Life will ensure the bullets simply bounce off. Yeah, that's not how bullets work. Just chill and I'll be back. Unbeknownst to the brothers, Harrison had received from
William Henry Harrison ends up getting his hero of Tippecanoe moniker from this whole conflict. He ends up running for president and winning. He was like the shortest lived president we ever had because he died a month in. But it was all built off of his military history. So this is actually incredibly important.
Permission to lead a raid of soldiers and militiamen on Prophetstown, the central headquarters of Tecumseh's Confederacy.
They won't even see us coming.
And then the Prophet quickly disregarded his brother's instructions. What would be known as the Battle of Tippecanoe wasn't particularly a victory for either side, unless you ask Harrison.
Oh, that was great.
Good marketing.
I mean, it was great. We sure taught them savages a lesson or two.
Didn't you lose just as many men as they did?
Well, yes, but...
Did you kill the Prophet?
No, he got away.
But did you get Tecumseh?
No, he wasn't even there. But we did push them back, and then I burned Prophetstown to the ground.
Wow, so we're burning down our enemies' capitals now. Hope that doesn't become a thing. Hey, look at all these shadows! The Battle of Tippecanoe further strengthened the alliance between the Brits and the Native Americans and fueled American anger at both. Also, back in 1803, the Napoleonic Wars started in Europe, with France pretty much taking on everyone. Because England and France were too busy killing each other, the United States started getting filthy rich trading with both countries.
This is because
Hell
I'm
yeah.
playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
As you can expect,
As
soon
one
both
does.
France and England started ignoring supposed American neutrality and seized ships bound for their respective rival. To make matters worse,
So this is an interesting thing. We almost got into, well, we did get into a conflict with the French, called the Quasi-War. It wasn't a huge thing, but we had some minor skirmishes at sea, which is not the best place for Americans to be fighting because our Navy was not very powerful. And neither of them are respecting American sovereignty and its right to trade as a neutral nation. The British especially really overstepped that line going into the War of 1812, and it ended up pushing a lot of Americans to want to go to war, despite the fact that we still aren't quite ready to fight a European power on our own. You can only push people so far, and the British are especially a threat because they have all of that Canada stuff going on, and Americans are like, well, the British are still among us. This could be our opportunity to take that, and then they're out of our hair for good. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? But that's not how this is going to work out.
American neutrality and seized ships bound for their respective rival. To make matters worse, England started impressing sailors on these American ships. And that's the story of how I ordered coffee behind Emma Watson. Oh. No, not that impressment. Oh, and now you're part of the British Navy. Oh. Yeah. That one. England needed all...
So American ships probably did have a lot of British deserters, but the fact that they had the right to just pull over neutral ships, basically, it was incredibly invasive. So Americans inherently disagreed with that. So, and they definitely ended up taking some actual Americans there. Like the line between an American and a British person was still pretty thin, and kind of hard to verify.
Of their sailors and then some. But many British
Get out of
sailors
there,
had deserted
dude.
the British Navy, claimed they had become American citizens, or just left for better pay on neutral American ships. So English naval officers would stop U.S. vessels and try to determine which sailors were really British. He's British. He's British. Hey, don't I know you? No, sir. I'm from New Jersey. Oh, Lord, he must be telling the truth. No one would ever lie and say they were from New Jersey. Over 6,000 men, most of them actually British, were impressed, and most true Americans were eventually released. But what incensed Americans the most were the Orders in Council. By this point, Napoleon had taken over all of the European continent and passed the Berlin Decree, banning all ships under his continental system or even neutral ships from using British ports. Not to be outdone, the British countered with the Orders in Council, saying all continental ports are hereby blockaded, and neutral ships headed to them needed to first stop in Britain, submit to a search, pay a duty, trade the cookies their mommies had packed them, but perhaps worst of all,
First, you gotta do the truffle shuffle. Come on! Do it! Come on! Do it!
then President Thomas Jefferson had had enough and persuaded Congress to pass the Embargo Act of 1807, meaning that American merchants couldn't import or export goods.
Yeah, this is... Okay, this is a nice, big power move by Jefferson, but it's something that Americans can't really maintain because, like I said earlier, we were heavily dependent on British trade. They were our biggest trade partner, and nobody was even close.
That'll show them. As you can guess, the American economy promptly fell into the toilet.
Congratulations, you played.
Jefferson was a man of ideas, not a man of pragmatism.
In 1809, the Embargo Act was switched out with the Non-Intercourse Act, which really only made trade with England and France forbidden and didn't really make the situation much better. So between the aiding of Indians, the impressment of men, and the orders in council, America kinda wanted to go to war with England? Jefferson's successor, President James Madison, No, go down, scroll down. There you go. Madison had tried to work
He's one of the only presidents shorter than me.
it out. Hey guys, how about this? I'll trade with whoever agrees to stop attacking our ships, okay? Fine, I'll stop attacking your ships. Be neutral, whatever. What about you, England? You in? No. This is stupid. Well, if he's not going to stop, I'm not going to either. Nationalism swelled in the United States, with a second war for independence being called for by young war hawks like Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun. Just curious, what did these dashingly handsome men look like a few decades later?
Terrifying.
Oh my God! What's wrong with your face?
Madison was pushed to ask Congress for a declaration of
These are
war
the
on
war
June
hawks.
1st, 1812. Debate raged along
As one
party
would call
lines,
them.
with Democratic Republicans calling for war and Federalists calling against. We need to restore the honor of this great nation! Yeah, we need to restore our economy, you dolt. The only thing preventing us from expanding are the Indians, who are supplied by the Brits. Great!
So this
we
is
gotta
clearly
have our ports blown up so
got
you
layers.
can have some more cow patties. Hell, if we do this thing right, we could grab Canada. They'd be happy to join us. We could grab Canada. We could grab Canada. We could grab Canada. Canada?
Oh my God, this is dumb.
I'm coming, baby! Let's go to war! So by the smallest margin of votes to do so the nation would ever cast, the United States declared war on England. But wait, coincidentally, just days after the war had been declared, England repealed the orders in council. Maybe this war wouldn't be needed after all. Word was rushed across the Atlantic, and when it reached the shore, it was greeted by... Fuck you.
He was
Let's
already.
do this.
They've already been pushed.
Hey, Mr. Beat, what brings you here?
Our collab. Remember? You're doing the War of 1812, which takes place both in the US and Canada, and I did a video comparing the United States and Canada.
Oh yeah, and looky, you can check out that video over here. Check out another Drawing of History video over there, subscribe, or even become one of these Patreon superheroes. So, Mr. Beat, you did a video about Canada?
Sure did.
Did she happen to mention me?
No, she didn't.
Damn it.
So that's Drawn of History, which I really enjoy. Like I said before, I'm going to leave it there. There are 2 more parts of this. If you want to check them out, we might do them in the future, but if you want to check them out now, you can, of course, go to the Drawn of History channel and check them out, as well as, let's see what they got. Let's see if you're interested in any of this stuff. They've got a video on Lafayette. We got stuff on Vikings. They got stuff on Berlin, Virginia colony, the Black Death, Pilgrims. They got options. So if you'd like to go check them out, go do so, because I do think it's worth it. I thought that was really fun and a very thoughtful and unique video.